What is something that you were warned about when you were younger that you now feel was exaggerated? Miscellaneous said. Stranger danger is a real thing, but you're much more likely to be abused by someone you know. Even someone your own age. I sometimes wonder if I was educated on this as a kid, if I'd have told a teacher what a classmate was doing to me for years and gotten some help earlier in my life. Situbusit Good Dog said. As an adult, I have some memories of my older brother doing things that were definitely not okay. But I knew him well, so it didn't even occur to me at the time that what was happening wasn't okay or that I even should tell somebody. It's okay now, but every so often I'll remember something that I've never remembered before and I'll be like, I guess that was sexual abuse. Edit. I've woken up and am overwhelmed by the kindness from you all. Thank Kyle for caring about a stranger, it means something. I do think her situation was maybe one of those ones where it's not necessarily completely sinister. The older kid knew that probably this isn't good, but wasn't mature enough to actually be aware that it was abuse. Additionally, we aren't blood related, so that does muddy lines sometimes between preteen and teen kids. I'm definitely not making excuses for him because what he did was for his own pleasure and nothing else, and that's sick. But we have a good relationship now, and I really do believe that there is no value in raising it with him now, and I do believe that he probably carries a huge amount of guilt and remorse for it all, and I know he is in therapy himself. Coincidentally, I am seeing a sexual trauma psychologist at the moment for a separate fucked up incident, so I will raise it with them. Why not? Cheesine09 said. You're absolutely right. My job includes doing preliminary security checks on new employees before passing their information along to our government clients. No one can access anything before you were 18 years old, not even for top secret clearance, but having a Facebook friend with an Islamic name by itself can delay your clearance for a few weeks. It might even cost you your clearance depending upon who his friends are. Little Tin Goddess said. Also, cannibalism was a huge concern in late elementary to early middle school days. It was highly unlikely we'd ever crash in the Andes or that our wagon train would get stuck in the mountains in winter, but for some reason all the kids in my school were concerned about it. Should we eat someone? Could we actually do it if we had to? Who should we eat first? The fat kid will keep, but we don't want the muscular guy to lose too much weight. We were pretty fucked up, I'm now realizing. Lady Guinevere 423 said. When I was 5, I did that many times and ended up with terrible constipation. I had to have x-rays for the doctors to check out what was going on. Our neighbor was a nurse and helped my parents give me an enema. Decro 3000 said. My 8th grade teacher kept telling us how scary high school was and how unprepared we all were. She told us that freshmen were to be hunted at the beginning of the school year. She told us that we'd probably get beaten up just because we were new. She told us that we'd have to run from class to class because we'd be a target. She told us we'd all be back visiting her and saying how sorry we were and how much we miss middle school. Her source was her daughter, who was like 3 years older than us. Fast forward to my first day of high school, I got assigned 2 seniors to show me around the school and be my buddy for the first couple of months. Literally one kid tried to mess with the freshmen and like the whole school was like, dude, what are you doing? Fuck you, Linda. High school was alright and nobody got hunted. Marshall Joe said. I had an identical thing with school in general. Whenever we're on the verge of graduation, elementary school to secondary, secondary school to college, they would always talk about how teachers at the next level would have a tough love, we don't care attitude. There were some elements of truth, but a lot of what they said turned out to be laughably wrong. I think it was just meant to scare the true slackers straight. Galagilifishing77 said. When I started my job I didn't have a car. Got off work at 2 a.m., went to the gym, then took the first bus of the day home at 4:30 a.m. A couple of my older coworkers were very upset by this and went to the boss, without speaking to me first, and demanded my schedule be changed. Because they were worried about me. The boss, without speaking to me, went to her boss and got my schedule change approved. I didn't want a schedule change. I have a sleep disorder and have to work at night. And I've been taking the city bus for about 15 years. The safest buses of the day were the first buses of the day. I was told I had to change my schedule and was not given a choice. They said I could switch to day shift, which begins at 5 a.m. So apparently taking the bus home at 4 a.m. is dangerous, but going to work on the bus at 4 a.m. is perfectly safe. Because the imaginary murderers and rapists hiding in the bushes waiting to attack me won't bother someone going to work. They only bother people going home. I think that's their logic. Forced to buy a car because of some nosy bitch who never took a bus in her life and is afraid of the dark SMH. And BTW when a co-worker who lived 25 miles away had her car break down for an extended period of time. You know what I did? I went and picked her ass up and took her home every night. I didn't go to the boss and demand her schedule be changed. I live less than 5 miles from work. Interesting how the people who were so concerned about me couldn't be bothered to give me a ride. Silverback 1992 said, "Giving you an award cause I legitimately got so fucking angry reading this, and I don't get angry. I just 100% understand the frustration. Go to your boss's boss and explain it if you want. Fuck them to Twonkus." Arnis1 said, "My 50-year-old dad actually got set on fire not too long ago, and he said his first reaction was to stop, drop and roll like he heard in grade school and that it worked. So it may not happen very often, but someday you may be thankful." Useless Skin said, "My 4-year-old niece lectured me the other day about not having a fire ladder in my second story and fire extinguishers strategically placed through my house. I mean, she's not wrong, but it still stung. Edit, yes, I will be getting some more fire equipment next month. I'll be sure to show her so she knows her tiny voice got heard." Slow-mo said, "We learned stop, drop and roll. I didn't pay much attention. Years later, in my 20s, I caught on fire, panicked and started running around, increasing the flames. Thankfully a friend of mine chased me down, tackled me and rolled me around until the fire went out. If I caught on fire today I'd probably still do the wrong thing, lol." Aureliano Tampa said, "My parents both smoked before having kids, and my mom raised me on stories about how the first time she smoked a cigarette, she coughed so badly that she threw up. It made staying away from smoking cigarettes pretty easy, because I didn't want to puke. Once I was in college I brought up the story to her and she blinked like an owl caught in the sunlight. 'Wait, you believed me?' she said. 'I was just trying to get you to not smoke. If smoking made me vomit, why do you think I smoked for 15 years? Good job, Mom.'" Elvis Mtvigas said, "I could definitely see throwing up the first time you smoke a cigarette, especially if it's a really strong one. Cigarettes taste horrible and the nicotine makes you feel lightheaded and nauseous if it's your first time. I didn't throw up but I coughed my guts out. Same thing with the first time I tried weed, cough for what felt like eternity." Bunnyard said, "My mom said some of her friends growing up were told lies like that. One friend was apparently told if she touched herself she would go crazy. My mom told me that this girl did go crazy because she was obsessed with trying to not touch herself. Like after she peed she had to make sure her hands didn't touch anywhere and this actually drove her crazy. Of course, I don't know if this is true or just a wild exaggeration from my mom, but she did seem sad when she told me that, so I think it might have been mostly true." Drenizan said, "The majority of those claims can be traced back to the same kind of quack medicine Kellogg was into. You know, the man who invented cornflakes to make people stop jacking off? The guy who popularized Malay circumcision because he thought it made boys not get off? The guy who advocated staunchly for using acid on little girls' clits specifically so they couldn't enjoy sex later in life? Sorry, I just listened to the Behind the Bastards episodes about him. It really did a great job explaining how Christian Puritanism and 1800s medicine both somehow revolved around jerking a gherkin. Oh, and Kellogg was also a strong supporter of eugenics. That's not related to masturbation, but I wanted to mention it anyway. Fuck Kellogg." Media Consumer 101 said, "Drug dealers. I thought people would force the drugs down my throat until I was a broke addict. I had been offered it a few times in high school, but funny enough they were all very wholesome interactions. My favorite was a guy I had never spoken to, who had just learned I was chronically ill, and he said that if I ever wanted to try anything he would give it to me for free and would help me to do it safely since he knew I didn't do drugs. It was just a very pure moment and I will never forget that look of kindness and concern in his eyes. I've since been around many drug dealers, I think everyone in the Netherlands has, and have never been forced, tempted or manipulated to do drugs. Captain Canut 93 said, I once saw it said that gifted students either became doctors, lawyers, or adults with crippling anxiety. Teaching kids to base their self-worth on academic achievement is essentially a high-risk, high-reward maneuver. You might give them the mentality to reach the top of the non-business income earners, but more likely you'll scar them for life when they don't get there and have to live with not being okay with being mediocre. Jean J said, I don't know how many people can relate to this, but I have gone through some mental stuff ever since I started puberty. Mom forbade me to ever tell others about what's going on with me, even friends, because I might be perceived differently, become a social outcast, etc. I became a social outcast regardless because of feeling alone and misunderstood, and then the internet grew up to be a cesspit of suicidal memes. Turns out young people have mental issues in all possible colors. Free Reflection 25 said, they probably come from anonymous surveys given out to 12-year-olds. Those surveys never factored in that teenagers lie all the time on them because they think it's funny. I know this because I was one of those 12-year-olds surveyed, and all my friends joked afterwards that we smoked crack. We didn't coordinate to do it, it just seemed like such a stupid question to ask. It is impossible to accurately survey kids. They will mark off answers to make it appear normal so as not to get it thrown out, but toss in one or two WTF answers. If anything, it was a middle school protest about being made to do it in the first place. Same is true for those reference tests to test how well kids are learning. The smart kids Christmas tree it and then go to sleep. There is no gain from trying and no harm from failing, so then why try? Fine Ban Me said, the requirement of having your shit together. Virtually everyone is in various stages of chaos, even if they give the appearance of having everything carefully planned. Edit. Didn't realize this comment would resonate with so many. I typed it without much thought and I'm overwhelmed with the effect it has had. Glad it has acted as a motivator for some of you. Faye and Wine said, this is the real answer. Maybe not the most practical one, but if you get a job waiting tables bartending on the weekends for even a few weeks, you'll meet multiple people with drug hookups. I kinda miss working in restaurants. Definitely not enough to ever go back. But at every office job I've worked since, there's this compulsion to present the most squeaky clean version of yourself to coworkers. Whereas working in restaurants, you'd have a coworker come in and immediately tell you, yeah, I caught my girlfriend cheating on me with my brother yesterday. After work I'm gonna scoop up an 8-ball and head across the street to get shit-faced. Wanna come? Kinda miss the total honesty and the shared commiseration of, well, this gig fucking sucks but at least you guys are cool. Truder said, to my absolute surprise, I recently discovered that this is actually a problem for typical adults. Of course, as long as you work in construction and use heavy equipment. Diesel engines and compressors generate vibrations, so soil can liquefy, and sink and suck excavators and bulldozers, even tracked ones. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Near me there is a big project of digging a canal trough C-spit and building waterway. It's 1.3 kilometers long and 120 meters wide. Obviously it's mostly sand, and from local crews I heard they had to call hardware rescue specialists 4 times in the span of 2 years. One was a write-off, it got below groundwater level. Bitter Herpes said, cracking knuckles causes arthritis. Lies. It's annoying to hear, but it doesn't cause arthritis. If you respect others, they'll respect you. Respect your elders. Such bullshit. People of all ages can be terrible people regardless of how they're treated. How likely it was for a tornado to plow into my elementary school. Pretty sure sitting on my knees in the hallway with my hands over my neck would not save me from a ceiling caving in. Lalabica said, we don't use calculators in class and you should learn how to not use one. You'll never catch anyone working with numbers not use a calculator. Edit. I think some of you all are taking this too seriously. The Reddit question was what was something that was exaggerated when we were younger. I understand that learning the basics in math is essential to developing an understanding of how simple things work, but some of my teachers were crazy strict. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate the knowledge they gave us, but dear lord, they made it seem like calculators were banned at workplaces or in real life. Shigui said, my school and parents, your friends are going to pressure you to drink. My friends in high school, LMAO, we're not old enough to drink, where do you even buy booze? My friends in college, you were a child baby, you can't drink. My friends, now that I'm old enough to drink, okay, I have Pedialyte and Gatorade for tomorrow morning. If you don't want to drink, we have soda. Everyone pace yourselves and make sure you eat. If you get the drunk sads or the spins, then here is my dog to comfort you. Rashak LaFord said, when I was younger, my mother once told me that if I didn't start paying attention in school, I'd be lucky to end up as a roofer. Yada, yada, yada. I got my SH together academically in high school, went to a good college, went to law school, got a good lawyer job. The other day my mom reminds me of the time she said that if I didn't start paying attention, I'd end up as a roofer. My response was, Mom, one of my best friends is roofer. He got his JED, never attended college, and after a few years of hard manual labor he was managing his own crews and running his own shop. He could probably buy and sell me multiple times over and works half as many hours. Thor 454 said, I never knew construction paid well. Then I started doing it. If you find the right company doing the right kind of construction, it's awesome. Sure, I work long hours half the year when it's construction season, but everyone I work with is happy to be here and we all get along, even the ones that don't particularly care for one another. And for a lot of, mostly, uneducated fools, we all do very well for ourselves. Incredibly nice brand new trucks and boats and side-by-sides are easily afforded. Most of us are homeowners and a lot of the older guys even have second home lake cabins. The trick is, even if you do not do well in school, you have to be smart in common sense type of way. If you've got that and a strong work ethic and can show up on time, every day, that's all it takes. You don't even have to be physically strong. Thor 454 said, I enjoy just knowing practical skills. I've done enough different kinds of construction that if I were to rent the equipment I could, from conception, build my own home, including all of the necessary dirt work and running of water and sewer lines all the way to finished product, with the exception of I'd hire an electrician for peace of mind, but even then I could rough it all in for him. Some days when it's 100+ outside, I long for the days of indoor easy on the body jobs, but those feelings are fleeting as I remember how bored I was and unhappy with the pay those jobs also brought with them. But that's just my experience with the skills and opportunities I personally have at my disposal. Reddit Reader 2206 said, I went to university, spent 5 years and $50K to get a degree. Then back again to a college for another year to get a certificate. Then lastly a technical school for 2 more years to get a diploma. Earn just shy of $100K a year now. My wife became an apprentice and went to a trade school. She no longer works on the tools, but has a cushy office job. Spent a total of 14 weeks in school. She earns just shy of $200K a year and has out-earned me every year since high school. For example, Capt Brand said, I felt pressured into going to college. Peer pressure, high school mentors, not my parents. Spent 3 years and $36K on my BS, and currently make a decent living after 7.5 years in the same industry. My student loans are paid off, I own a house, and I don't have much non-mortgage debt, but my wife still has to work to help support us, too. My brother dropped out of high school, went from full-time at McDonald's to working on the railroad, and now earns my wife and me put together, always has and likely always will. Meanwhile, my dad is one of the most experienced techs nationwide in his specialty and has had a steady job for almost 20 years. I wanted to be an electrician. Neve Ha said, as someone who was born in 2003, the dangers of the internet. Don't get me wrong, there are dangers and we should be taught how to be cautious about them. In fact, some dangers are becoming even more apparent. The thing is, the teachers giving these internet safety talks didn't even know that you could make your account private on the social media apps that they were talking about. Rather than their attitude being, you will die within a matter of days if you post any picture on the internet, it should instead be, there's no point in us pretending that you're not on social media, so here's how to not ruin your life with it. To be fair, some of the talks that happened later on were more like this, similarly to what they do with talks about alcohol, at least in my country. Manpooper said, yup. The internet has its dangers, but a lot of them have been hidden, blunted in more recent years. It used to be true that you could do something stupid and have the picture video never go away, but, on the other hand, It's super hard to find a bunch of old forgotten stuff from around the time you were born. It seems to last up to around 20 years on the internet, not forever. That being said, the advice was true when I was in high school, not that any of the teachers' adults understood it yet. It was the Wild West back then, with dark corners behind every door rather than hidden away in the middle of nowhere with no address like it is now. Murder Bit of Rivia said. So, let me tell you the story about the last time I smoked weed. Which is the only drug I've ever done, besides drink. It was more than 25 years ago. And I was a very casual user. I only smoked a handful of times. I never bought anything myself, but would occasionally smoke when offered by my older sister. I had recently started hanging out with a friend of hers, and he offered me some and I was like sure. What followed was a very scary night. I didn't know why at the time, but I was later to find out that the pot was laced with PCP. The worst part was when I was driving. And it was like I had no depth perception. I would slam on the brakes because I would suddenly realize that the stoplight was right there. Only to realize that it was really half a block away. I remember distinctly being stopped at a train crossing. There was a semi-truck in the lane next to me, and a cop car behind me. My entire body was shaking, vibrating in time to the train semi, and it was taking all my concentration to not release the clutch and roll back into the cop car. After dropping my friend off, who I never spoke to again, I couldn't handle driving anymore, even the couple miles to get home, so I pulled into a bar parking lot, crawled into my back seat and slept the rest of it off. The next day, I called my sister and told her what happened, and when she confronted him he said he didn't tell me because he thought it would be funny. What an asshole. But that right there ended my experimentation phase. I was 19. And I still have a lingering phobia whenever I am prescribed a new medicine. I have a really hard time taking it for the first time. Iron Weedy said. That gay men will try to rape me if I'm let alone with them. Literally, my dad told me a story about how one time, he and his buddy went to a party and it turned out to be a gay recruitment event. Said he almost had to physically fight his way out of there. He even said a girlfriend of his ended up being led off to a different room with some other girls. Sounds like she was already curious. I have been alone with gay men plenty of times and even had a gay roommate for a while. Only got propositioned a couple of times and honestly felt a little offended when I didn't get tit on. Know what happens when you say no thank you? They stop asking and go look for someone else. Such a struggle. Sindel said. I think they tell you that because while most algebra and geometry isn't in daily life, the basic principles are. For instance, seeing 15% off a listed price or doubling a recipe. My college professor said once that you can't always trust a computer or system to get it right. She once wanted to buy a car and the salesman handed over the monthly payments for the agreement along with the interest, fees, etc. She insisted on taking it home, but the salesman assured her that they had a computer check it. She still took it home, did the math, and realized that the dealership was off. Like way off. She told them and they checked it, finding out it was a glitch or something. She didn't buy the car and the salesman said, well, we would have eventually caught it. But how many people signed it without second thought? And even if they did, they wouldn't have let that extra money go without some more justification. Edit. I think some of you guys are misunderstanding the point. The salesman could have been lying, but the original point remains the same. If most people don't understand how compound interest, or simple interest for percentages or basic principles work, they would sign it away without second thought. If you have some clue how some of that works, it might be a good idea to check it to make sure they're giving you the right numbers or you're literally handing them money for no reason. This same idea applies to everything. If you don't understand how to apply critical thinking, you might watch Fox News and believe everything. If you don't understand how science works, you might become an anti-vaxxer because somebody told you that they checked it out. Math is the same thing, folks, and there's people who convince other people with bad math or statistics. Shinkao Hayao said. I realized that if I added up school, commuting to school, homework, tutoring, class projects, extracurricular activities, and all the character-building part-time jobs my parents made me work, I was effectively working 12-14-hour shifts 6 or 7 days a week. No wonder I was such a miserable wreck in high school. Now that I'm an adult with an 8-hour work-from-home job, I have so much more free time and so much less stress. TBH, I think adulthood sucked for my parents because they got married, had kids, bought a house and settled into their forever jobs before age 25, and a lot of their friends and family members were doing it at 18 or 20. So at a time in their lives when they could have been enjoying adult freedoms, they were stuck in incompatible marriages, shackled to jobs they hated, and too burdened by debt and childcare responsibilities to even think about trying again.